Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Thoughtful Talent Show. I'm Jen Werner from Jen Werner Coaching.
And I'm Chad Ahern from Talent Teams Consulting. And today we are blessed to have two of our fellow Gallup and Eat to Grow certified coaches with us. I have the pleasure of introducing Cindy Butts. Cindy is obsessed with people and their talents and how they show up in the world with those talents. She's the founder of Grow With Your Strengths, a Gallup-Certified Strengths coach, an ACE certified coach, and has worked in HR leadership roles in the well-being industry for her entire career. Her expertise in facilitating engaging, lively, and memorable workshops and team conversations support companies and teams to develop their talent, raising the bar for their individual and collective performance. Cindy lives in beautiful Barrington, Rhode Island, a fellow New Englander. I'm so happy to have her here. And her work takes her across the country, both in person and on Zoom. And I want to thank Cindy for making the time to join us today, though I know that the theme we're going to talk about today is right up her alley and it involves lots of people. And we'll get to that in a minute. Jen, would you like to introduce our other guest?
Absolutely. Welcome, Cindy.
I'm so glad to be here.
Great. So it's my privilege to introduce you to Brea Roper. So Brea is a fellow Eat to Grow and Gallup certified coach also, like Chad said. She's high energy, and you're going to see that in a minute. Extremely knowledgeable and truly delighted by finding hidden talent in people so they can reach their full unrealized potential. Brea has been drinking the strengths Kool-Aid, as we say, for over 20 years now, and she decided to go all in about 7 years ago when she got certified by Gallup and launched her company, Strength and Story. So in addition to her full-time work as a consultant and facilitator and coach, she also is an international speaker and published author. She's been featured on stages and pages across the US and Europe, including a castle in Ireland. I'm so excited to hear about this, and pages of Success magazine, and now the Thoughtful Talent Show. Welcome, Brea.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
So today we brought these two with us because we want to talk about the CliftonStrengths Talent theme of woo. So before we jump in, I wanted to see where this falls for the two of you. Brea, let's start with you. Where is this in your top 5?
Number 2.
This is number 2. And Cindy?
It's number 5, but people often say that it's probably my number 1.
That's awesome. We hear that so often about people's top 5s, and definitely when they're these influencing strengths, right? So yeah, Chad, we'd love to hear what Gallup has to say for the short description of the woo theme.
Yeah, so I'll read that in a second, but I think it's worth noting here that we have woo people on right ahead of the Gallup Summit. So all 4 of us are going to be joining about 800 to 900 other Gallup enthusiasts and fellow coaches. So if you hear us reference the summit, that's what we're talking about. We're going to the Gallup Summit. That's going to be June 5th through the 7th. And all of us are looking forward to going. So I thought that was an interesting tie into today's recording. We're going to obviously be releasing this just after the summit. Once we all had a blast learning and seeing woo in action. So with that said, I did want to get the official Gallup description on the recording and to start us off on our conversation. So Gallup defines the woo theme as follows. People exceptionally talented in the woo theme love the challenge of meeting new people and winning them over. They derive satisfaction from breaking the ice and making a connection with another person. Hence, why they are going to be awesome people to know when we go to the summit.
Yes.
So before we get to the summit, and we'd like to know a little bit about how this shows up for each of you. So, Brea, I'm going to start with you, and just could you tell us not so much the positive and negatives, because we'll get to that in a minute, but just sort of how does this show up? How does this team kind of throw itself into the world and interact with others, both at your individual and within your sort of social circles?
Yeah, I mean, how does it not? It's always on, you know. The way that it shows up is a lot of energy, a lot of social energy. So the summit is exciting. I remember the first time I went to the summit was right after my certification with Gallup. I was in person in Omaha, very intensive week, long days, lots of learning, like learning from a fire hydrant. And then literally like that night started the summit with, I think there were over 1,000 people there in a conference center, which sounds like to a lot of people like their worst nightmare. And I had so much energy. I was like just going. So, and I didn't know anyone. I had just gotten certified. I was brand new to Gallup and didn't know anyone. And it was like my best life. So that's how it shows up every day. Yeah. The more people, the better. And the more people that are new, the better. Yeah.
Nice. Brea, I want to clarify something you've shared with me before that I thought was might be really informative for people listening and maybe even learning their strengths for the first time. You've talked to me a little bit about when going through the pandemic, that you actually needed to find opportunities to actually get out and sort of woo or use that theme. Can you talk to me a little bit about that? Because I know you've told me, but our listeners haven't. So
yeah. I mean, every talent theme brings something, right? It contributes something, and it needs something in order to be strong and to be healthy. It needs something. So woo brings a lot of social energy, you know, and a lot of connections with new people. And in the pandemic, I mean, there was no naturally occurring opportunity, you know, for that on a regular basis. So I had to go out and find it. And even today, still, if I feel like my day doesn't provide opportunities for woo to really thrive and shine, I go back to something that I learned in the pandemic, which was going to a drive-thru, you know, because I couldn't go in places anymore. I couldn't go work, you know, at a coffee shop or whatever. So go through a drive-thru and just woo the heck out of whoever was taking my order, you know. But it starts from the speaker, you know, when they say whatever they're going to say that they say to everybody, you know, and you can tell that they're just in this monotony. And then woo just pulls them out of it. It's like, oh, well, yes, you may take my order, or oh, thank you so much, or you know, and then from there, it's like by the end of it, I'm getting free drink or something, you know, because they're like, wow, that was so great. You just have a great day, and I'm like, you too, honey. See ya. You know, so
that's awesome.
Yeah. Nice. Cindy, what about you? How does this show up? And maybe if there are variations on this theme. I mean, we know that all of our themes interact differently and we all show up differently. We're all unique individuals. What's similar? What's different from what Brea's sharing? And how does this theme show up for you?
Yeah, for me, I mean, I kind of gather people. My input and my woo are constantly paired up. And so I think of it as, you know, a need, right, to connect with other people, but sort of gathering people. I think I have a story. This is a really simple story. But when I left an organization about 6 years ago, it was through an acquisition. The only thing I really wanted to take with me was all of my email addresses. Like I wanted to take the people. I was like freaked out that I wasn't going to have, and there were thousands and thousands of email addresses. And I had been the head of HR, so I had lots of connections and people that I'd tried to recruit with my woo over the years. And I was kind of panicked. And I remember going to the IT people and to the legal, and they're like, no, you can take everyone. Like you can take them with you. And so I just downloaded everyone, and it made me like my heart just like, oh. I was really nervous about losing all of those people. And Brea, I can see you like, oh yeah. And the rest of the team thought I was nuts. They're like, there's like 10,000 plus emails. Why don't you delete some of them? And I was like, why would you ever delete someone who could be a potential friend? Like, so I don't know. I'm always drawn to gathering people. People rely on me to connect them with other people. So the more people I have in my network, whether it's like a person, an email, a list, you know, when I was doing volunteer work years ago, I would have lists of people and I wanted to get to know every person. So yeah, for some reason I feel responsible for connecting with people and also for connecting other people to each other. I don't have any responsibility. It's not about responsibility.
That's so interesting that you said that about connecting other people, because I have another friend who is high woo also, and I say like that's what he is. Like I'm so attached to him already, and I think he looks for ways to like get rid of me, but in a nice way, because he needs to collect new people, you know, and woo new people. So he's constantly introducing me to people like, oh, you need to meet so and so, and then I'm like, oh, I like you, and you know, it's like so exactly like you're saying, making those connections with others. I've seen that play out in other woos as well. That's awesome.
Yeah, I have a follow-on question that I've always been curious about. And having two of you here to answer it, I think is just fantastic. We know that Gallup has a much longer description for woo. And something that has always struck me about it is that it almost reads like a theme that, you know, you meet people, you love them for that moment, and then you kind of leave them, kind of like what Jen's talking about with her friend. You know, I want to meet you, I want to get to know you in the moment, but now I'm going to be on to the next person, and kind of this leave aspect of it. And I know it's probably not meant as unfriendly, but I'm just wondering, what sort of relationship permanency do you have with this theme? You know, once you meet them, then what? And maybe I don't know who wants to jump on that question first. I know it's sort of a loaded one, but Cindy, it looks like you've got a thought percolating.
Well, I think, you know, I think it's pairing your strengths and thinking, what are your other strengths that can help you build longer lasting relationships? It's easy for us to kind of get in and get out and say you're a friend, right? We use that word pretty loosely in a much different way than someone, you know, it's not opposite, but like someone with relator, use the friend in a very different way than we would. But yeah, just pairing your strengths up to think, how can you build a strong relationship? And actually in coaching people that have woo, you know, it's an important question that question you just asked, Chad, is actually an important question to make sure that that strength doesn't get in our way, and we don't gather without meaning or depth. And, you know, we can make fun of ourselves because sometimes people say, you know, one of the things that is challenging with woo is that, you know, we're seen as shallow or something, which I don't feel like I'm shallow. But it is an important thing. Which of your strengths help support you to build long-lasting, meaningful relationships? Not with everyone, right? You can't do that. You're spreading yourself too thin. So I build relationships with my input and give people books, articles, send links, send memes, send texts with memes, like all kinds of things to help people help stay connected with people. So yeah, I don't know what do you think, Brea?
Yeah, Brea, I want to come to you about that same question, because
Yeah.
I know it comes out differently, and maybe different solutions or different considerations for people that maybe are still learning how to accept and use this theme.
Yeah. Well, it's two things come to mind. I mean, first of all, this is very true, right? The love them and leave them. I mean, that in a very raw, unaware, you know, unexamined state, woo can definitely do that. Which sometimes is exactly what you need, right? And that's the beauty of the strength. So if there's an opportunity for that, you know, where you just need someone to make a quick connection, you know, and that's it, then woo's perfect for that, right? But if the goal is relationship permanency, I think is what you
that was my term. It wasn't coming from Gallup. I was thinking more of like, you know, infants. We talk about, you know, object permanence, and this is having that same sort of feel of the relationship's there while you're present, but then as soon as you walk away, it's gone. You know, kind of does it evaporate? And that's sort of the basis of my question is what keeps it around, kind of like what Cindy was saying. But also, how do you feel about that when you just sort of walk away from a conversation or a new relationship and move on to the next person that you want to, you know, apply your woo to? So that's what.
So woo feels great. right? I mean, because it's accomplished its goal, right? You won them over. So you know, as Cindy was talking about earlier, woo can really develop an incredible network of people. And to woo, I think most of the time, depending on your other strengths, right, your other talent, but most of the time, it really does. Like all those people are friends, you know, and all those people, like I could, anytime I'm in their city, even if it's been 10 or 20 years since I've seen them, like I'll just shoot them a quick text because of course they're still in my phone. Of course I still have their contact information, you know. So I'll shoot them a quick text and I'll just say, hey, like I'm passing through. Can we, you know, can I buy a drink, you know? And it really wasn't until I started really diving into my own strengths that I realized that that was weird, you know, and that not everybody did that. And then I started getting curious with my words with people that I really trusted. And I asked them, like, why, you know, I haven't seen you in 20 years. Like, why did you say yes to meet with me? You know? Um, and, you know, and they would often say, they would reference something like, well, gosh, whenever I'm with you, I just feel so good. Or remember that one time that we met for 10 minutes? Like it was just a really great experience. And so I think that really clued me into the power that woo can have for better or for worse, right? Because if you love them and leave them, that's not a great experience, right? But even if you do love them and leave them, if there's something like, even if I'm not, you know, connecting with them over the years, there is something about that experience that they will remember. So to make sure that woo is really dialed in and really like sees the person instead of just bringing an agenda of trying to win them over to whatever, if you can win them over in a really genuine, authentic way, it really can be powerful for people, and that lasts. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I've heard you both say before that there's this like it it might seem shallow in that moment, the love them and leave them part, but that if your woo truly has done its job, and you've won them over, they remember you forever. Like from that one even 10-minute experience, they will remember how you made them feel and influenced them. And so I think it's one of those like great powerful things about woo that I love seeing, and I've seen in both of you already too. So can we move to the next question? Are we ready?
So I just want to add one thing, just as a clarification for our listeners. All of us coaches know what woo means. A lot of people see that initial theme name. It's actually one of the few, if only, themes that is abbreviated. And they've hinted at, both of our guests have hinted at the true meaning of it. But for clarification, woo stands for winning others over. And that's why both of our guests very nicely have highlighted that this is an influencing theme. It is about winning others over to a particular cause, and that sort of got highlighted in the short definition. That's why we read it. But I did want to put that out there, put sort of black and white for people to understand that woo stands for winning others over. So with that said, I would love to turn it over to Jen for our next set of questions, but I thought it was pertinent to add.
Absolutely. Thanks, Chad. And we're so used to the language, we don't even think of, doesn't everybody know that already? Sure. And you both have hinted on some of these potential negative things that can come from our talents. So we all tend to have these moments where our strengths come on a little too strong, or maybe we're just neglecting them altogether. And so that brings some kind of negative things to it. I'd like to talk with you both about what those might look like for you personally. Where has woo gotten in your way of even personal relationships or personal things, or at work? Cindy, let's start with you.
Okay, so I'll start with one that might sound funny. It's almost impossible for me to leave a party. Like literally, I'll get there first, I'll leave last. And my husband, like, oh my goodness, waiting in the car, he's ready, and he's so social, but ready to go way before I am. So that, like, and I have achiever also, so there's an intensity. So the stamina of my woo can be overwhelming and for other people. and it's really hard to leave. It's hard to say goodbye. Even when I'm doing coaching with large groups on Zoom, I'm like, bye, bye. And then I'll say, my woo doesn't really want to say goodbye. It's so silly. So I guess that's not like a negative, but it hurts our heart.
Sure.
Even say goodbye. And then during the pandemic, it was hard. As Brea has talked about, we seek other people. That's just the way we spend our energy, is to be around other people, and being alone made me lonely. And just thinking about those in-person connections that we didn't have, even though I was on Zoom with 50 people, 20, lots of Zoom workshops, lots of coaching. So I saw people, but it still didn't feed my woo the way an in-person connection did. So just, so it get in the way of our, it's like nourishment. People are, I never really said that out loud before, but our people connections nourish us. And when we don't have that, it can make us sad.
I was just connecting what Brea was saying earlier with what you're saying, and then also all the new research they're finding about isolation and the uptick in people feeling loneliness, the feelings of loneliness. Wow, what a powerful statement to make of this is a particular group that if you put them in Zoom 24/7, you are going to quickly find them. It sounds like a very lonely bunch because they're not getting that recharge. I really appreciate you sharing that, Cindy. That's pretty powerful.
And I saw the empathy on Brea's face the entire time. Brea, can you share with us how this shows up for you too, like in some of these negative ways or negative things that have come from it?
I mean, thanks, Jen, for your question, but my positivity really doesn't want to.
Yeah, I know.
Yes, of course. I think there are so many things that I could share, but the thing that I think a lot of people who don't have woo don't understand or may not understand is how much woo needs to win others over. It needs it needs to win, and so I think some of the times that I feel most challenged, whether that's in a relationship, or at work, really, I mean, everywhere, is when there's something that my woo feels really passionate about, or all of my other talents, like really, and it wants to win others over to my side, and it's up to me to keep that in check, to make sure that, I'm not just like coming in like a bulldozer all the time, trying to like scoop everybody up, to everything that I'm doing. I guess a bulldozer is the wrong metaphor.
It's okay. I use it with activator all the time too. Yeah.
There we go. Yeah. But really, like, if there are moments that you're with a woo and you can tell that they're kind of championing for something, and it's on the smaller side, like where to go to dinner, or what song to listen to, or what channel to put, on the radio or whatever. Sometimes we just need a quick win, if we are not wooing in bigger ways that we really want to or need to. Sometimes we'll seek those little wins, right? So please don't fight us. Please, like, if it really doesn't matter, it would be great to have those opportunities to win you over, yeah.
One of the things you've told me before too that I thought was really, honestly, like it's kind of, once you said it, I was like, oh, duh, that you need people. You can't woo by yourself.
Yeah.
Can you like go into a little more detail for our listeners about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's true with all the relationship building themes, like you can't be in relationship by yourself. And similar for influencing, you need other people to do it. You need people to influence, right? But with woo especially, it really does like need other people. So in the pandemic, when I'm living alone, I'm working alone, I'm alone, and then the whole world shuts down, and you really are alone because you can't even go to coffee shops or anywhere, and you're just like, oh my gosh, like there literally is no one to win over, and so there's no way to express that theme, which
What about your family? Can you woo your family?
you can, but what if you're locked up, and
Yeah, sure.
you can't be with them, but I think what Cindy was saying, there's something about being in person that woo especially appreciates. But it's it's more than just like being with people. It's really about that winning others over. And so not only does it need people, it needs to win, so if you feel someone like really pushing hard, it's probably because they haven't been able to express that need or meet that need in other places. So sometimes you just gotta give them the win.
Give them the win. Oh yeah. And I think this is so good for our listeners to hear. And Chad and I also, Chad, I'm speaking for you too, because woo is pretty low for us. I don't honestly remember where mine is. 29, 22, something like that. It's low. It's down there. And Chad's, where is it for you?
Mine's 32. So I am
there you
about
go.
as far from this conversation in terms of being able to directly relate. Then there's only a couple other talents that are further down. And that's why I'm finding this so informative and why I'm coming with so many questions. But I'm taking Jen, you were headed toward a question, I sense.
Yeah. And so I wanted, I just wanted to thank you, for being vulnerable with us and sharing that information. Brea, someone else who has woo might never have heard that before or never thought about that. Like, that's why I need that win. Like, that's why I was so upset that day. And so just being able to like bring out some of these things, I know it's a little uncomfortable and vulnerable, but I just applaud you both for sharing those vulnerable sides with us. So let's flip it.
Oh, I actually have one question.
Chad.
No, I just know Cindy's shared something with me before, and I found it very informative around woo, especially since woo is 32 for me.
Yeah.
Cindy, you shared with me the value or the importance of getting feedback. And you were just talking about all the Zoom calls, all the coaching you participate in and that you run. You've also told me before about how important feedback is to your woo. And I was just wondering if you could just detail that a little bit about sort of what the negative side of that might look like and how that impacts you, just so that other people, like Brea was pointing out, if people are isolated or people aren't getting feedback, what is something to be aware of, or how that might show up?
Yeah, it's interesting. We like crave feedback. It's part of what Brea was saying, the literal part of winning others over. And I notice in my work, I have client contacts, I have great relationships. And if I don't get feedback, this is going to sound so silly, but if I don't get feedback pretty quickly, and even like, that worked great, or, that was great, but we need to do this next time. Like something, it doesn't matter if it's like, it doesn't need to be like, yay, feedback, but something. If I don't get anything, which might mean that just someone's busy, right?
Sure.
And I'll hear from them in a couple of days, right? Which isn't much time. I make up all kinds of stories about the fact, Brea, that I maybe didn't win them over. And even with like longer term clients, right? So just remind, and I have activator too, which I know Brea you have, and Jen you have. So like we want things quickly, and can be impatient, which is another whole challenge. Right. But that lack of feedback will get in our way of success. It will challenge us because we will create scenarios that are not true to fill that void. So it's important for someone that has woo to be mindful of that and to know, a couple of days, a week, like give it some time. And what kind of feedback are you looking for? What would be helpful? And not to like overthink, don't turn that strength off, right? We always say don't, but maybe, just try to think like, what are you gaining? What are you looking for when you're looking for feedback? So I don't know if that resonates with you, Brea.
Yeah, I think what you're trying to say, or what you're saying is woo wants feedback because we want to know if we won you over, right?
Thank you for your communication.
There you go.
Just, and so sometimes that sounds like, does that make sense?
Yes.
Or sometimes that might sound like, if I can't, like most of the time, my relationship building themes will be able to read your face, or your body posture or things like that. And so it might be that's the feedback that woo is looking for, and that's enough, depending on your other talent themes. But if I can't read your face, or if you haven't given me any change in body posture, then I'm going to ask you, because of my talent themes, right? I'm going to be very direct, and I'm going to say, gosh, I can't tell what you're thinking right now, or can you help me understand, or whatever. So it'll use questions to try to pull that out of people. So if you lead with woo and you find yourself doing things like that, seeking feedback, pay attention. And also if you know that if you're someone that's with a woo, and they're asking you some questions, give them a little bit of, you don't have to hold all your cards. They're not trying to manipulate you. They just are seeking to understand, even though it's called winning others over, that's really not the heart of it. They want to understand, and find that common ground. So
right, I think of connection that
connection.
To me, it's about like the winning others over means connection.
Nice.
Yeah. And thank you, Brea. That was just a beautiful example of your communication coming in.
Rescuing us all.
Like 2 sentences. So thank you. That was cool.
Nice. All right. Thank you for indulging my question. I know Jen wanted to take us to the next one, so I'll be quiet now.
No, Chad, I thought it was really good because the feedback was one of those things that I've noticed too, that there is that like constant yearning for that feedback from those with woo. So I'm glad you brought it up. So let's switch this over now. I want to talk about the ways this talent has truly made you shine. Like, where do you see like this success of your life has come from all these things that are surrounding your woo and how you use it? What are some of these positive ways you see it play out in your life and work? Brea, we'll start with you.
Oh man. All of a sudden, all the things come to my brain, but really just like with every talent theme, I think the thing that's most helpful for my woo is to look for places where it's needed, where it's valued, where the love them and leave them, can be helpful, because I have done a lot of work in making sure that I'm refining my woo and the rough edges, are a little less rough. But gosh, it just feels good when I can just let it fly, just be free with it. And that's where it really shines, is in moments where that's my job, is to stand at the door and woo every single person that passes by. I think woo is very good at hospitality. It can be great at creating a space where people feel welcome, whether that's a space for a second, or for a few minutes or a few days or whatever. But it wants to win others over, right? So it wants essentially to make you comfortable, to win you over. And in order for you to be won over, you have to be happy. You have to be, comfortable with whoever you're talking to, all the things. So there's that element of hospitality there. So whenever I have an opportunity to do that, especially if it's in a quick way where I don't have to like build relationships forever. So that's great for Woo. Yeah.
Awesome. Cindy, do you have similar experiences or other ways that it's been a positive for you?
Yeah, I guess, I feel like people rely on me to connect them with other people. So who do you know that, is a question that people will often ask me. And they'll always say, oh, I don't want to put you out, I don't want, and I'm like, oh, this is so exciting. Let me think about the network of people I have and who I might be able to connect you with. And so it's a simple email connection, connecting someone with someone else. And that I think it's just so simple. And I love it when people ask me that, because it's something that with my Woo, I can do easily. The other thing I was thinking about that, if I think about the work that I've done and how I've been able to use my Woo and be energized by that and kind of offer value, is I've been in different talent acquisition roles. So looking for talent, being able to connect with those people, bring them into an organization different organizations that I've worked with. It's such an amazing way to use that talent. It's been so exciting over the years. And then doing onboarding, you just reminded me when you were talking about like building a place where people are comfortable. Like I loved heading up onboarding, making sure that it was inviting, warm, that people were kind of ushered into whatever organization I was with. And then building a culture. Like that was my Woo was very happy, right? Trying to build a culture that connected company values. And you can talk about the culture, but the culture is connecting with people, and making sure that they get, that they understand and feel connected with the values. So you just, when you were talking about that, I realized, I'm like, yes, that's what I was doing. I was making sure to win them over in connection with the company values. So yeah, so I guess I feel lucky. I've been in roles over the years that have been needing my Woo, right?
Awesome.
Yeah, I think, gosh, Cindy, it's so good. Every time I listen to you, I hear, yeah, like, of course you're drawn to onboarding because you've got your Woo activator, right? So, and same for me, I love coming in at the beginning of their experience, at the door, at the check-in table, like how can I, activators drawn to the beginning, right? But then you've also got like Woo belief, might want to win others over to the values, right? In an organization, or the purpose, or you've got Woo plus whatever. And that's the theme dynamics are just so great, Cindy and I can talk about our Woo, but I guess this is my invitation to whoever's listening to look at your Woo and say, okay, I'm winning others over, there's that element. And then just pair it up with one or two other talents of yours in your top 5 or your top 10 if you have it, and explore the relationship. I love, because of my unique talent profile, I love being a part of the entire process, and I love being in a room where we're planning an event. And if someone asks me, how can we Woo others over at the beginning, I'm not just thinking about when they enter the door and go to the check-in table. I'm thinking about, how are we inviting them, right? How are they even hearing about this? How can we make that experience amazing? Are we mailing them a box of goodies? Are we tagging them, by name with a cool little something, on social media? I don't know. What are we doing to really Woo them? And how can that extend throughout the entire process? But depending on your talents, it might be that you come in at the end, or in the middle or whatever. So explore the dynamics of, all the themes and how they work together.
And Brea, it's so interesting. I have activator and achiever, right? So I'm thinking about wooing them before we meet, right? In the very beginning, with email communication, gifts, the words in the invite are so important. Each email, and then achiever also, like getting across that finish line. So that's it's a great example for others that are listening to think about if you look at your talents, how do you pair, and if you do have woo, or if you know someone has woo, right? How do you pair up your other strengths? I lead with strategic thinking themes. So I'm constantly thinking about, I have strategic and input, and then I have ideation and learner in my top 10. But what pathway makes the most sense to use my woo? And as I've matured, learning about how sometimes, too much woo is too much for people.
Well, I always say too much woo is usually too much you. Right?
Yeah, so good.
Because that's
Exactly.
when it becomes about me. It becomes
Right.
about my agenda. It becomes about what I'm trying to win you over to. And true woo at its best, like when it's really thriving, it's an influencing theme. So it is about influence, but really like it should be focused on the other person, right? How can I I don't know. I think we should all be serving and pouring ourselves out to other people all the time. But that's what I think it is like what you can tell, you can spot the woo that's all about them, right away. And that's what people don't trust, that's where people feel manipulated. That's, too much woo is too much you. But if you can focus on the other person, then that's when it can become genuine and authentic, and it works, like you're able to help people maybe accept some change within the organization that they might be resistant to at the beginning, or maybe you do get to go to your favorite restaurant, like whatever that case may be.
Mic drop moment right there. Thank you.
And I've been impressed. They've actually covered sort of our initial next question, which is, which themes do they normally pair together? So I don't even know if we have to ask that one, but I am curious about the rabbit hole question that we always tend to ask.
Yeah, absolutely. Go there with the rabbit hole, because they absolutely got the talent dynamics down. Good job, guys.
Yeah. So just to clarify the question, we've addressed this one in previous episodes. We know that sometimes our one theme can get on a kind of a runaway train, or down the rabbit hole. And I'm just kind of curious, which ones do you use to kind of rein that back? So like, I know my learner can go off the rails, want to know anything and everything, follow the internet, rabbit holes. My responsibility kicks in, brings that back. I'm curious if there's a theme that you find that you often go to help. Okay, my woo needs to actually have an impact, or it has a direction or something. Is there a theme you lean on? And if so, what is it, and how does that play out? And Cindy, I'm going to come to you again.
Okay. Yeah. It's clearly my achiever strength. It's my number one, and that's the executing theme in my top 5. And when I go down a rabbit hole with all my strategic thinking themes or with my woo, I tend to, okay, what am I trying to do? What is the end goal? What am I aiming for? What does success look like? Like all those questions that you'd ask to appeal to your achiever. There's a voice in my head, right? To keep me on track, because with all my strategic thinking themes and my woo, which is so focused on social energy, I can be really easily distracted. So I need that that connection with my achiever to keep me on track. And I know, Jen, you have achiever. Chad, do you have achiever?
Yeah.
It's somewhere in, I think, my top 10 or 12. It's actually not as high as a lot of people think it is. The one I'm resonating with is my responsibility kicks in. So, when you need to get something done, it's starting to sound like some of us, or at least Cindy and I, are going to one of those executing themes of, okay, what's the here and now? What am I responsible for? What do I need to achieve? Right. So I'm resonating with that, but I know that different people are going to do different things, to bring themselves out of the rabbit hole. I am kind of curious, given what Cindy's just said, Brea, what's your sort of response to what theme kind of pulls your woo off the gas pedal?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it pulls it off or if it gives it more gas, and maybe a little bit of both, but communication, number one, is just how I do everything. I mean,
Okay.
if I could do email with my voice, I would. I mean, I can, it's possible, but if I could do it well with my voice, I totally would. If I could drive my car with my voice, I would. And so we've already talked about it, but asking, for that feedback. So if my woo is just, I can tell it's like really trying hard. I'm facilitating a workshop, for example, and I can tell that people aren't quite getting it, or they're not quite on board yet, or whatever the case may be. Woo will just like go and go and go and pull and pull and pull, to try and try and try. And so often it defaults to communication to see, like, are we connecting? Like, I need to hear you say it. But if I don't get that, and sometimes that happens where it's just a group of people that are a lot of strategic thinkers, and they just need some time to figure out what they feel and what they're thinking, and so they can't respond to my communication in real time. Then that's really, really hard for me, for communication with number one and number two. So that's where I think I just have learned that, like, it's okay to just stop wooing, like, you just have to, like, catch yourself. And then I don't know that it's another talent. I think it's just, I just am aware of that. And I know what that feels like in me when I'm off the rails, when I'm gone too far. And I know what that looks like on other people's faces, and in their body posture, when they're like, lady, like, you just need to stop for a minute, like, I'm done being wooed. And the awareness of like, not everybody is like me, not everybody has this thing called woo. So when you show up 20 years later and you're like, hey, best friend, it's weird to some people,
I would say, unless you truly have won them over, because that is something that I think has been so wonderful about the people that I've met who have woo. When they do win me over, they can show up 20 years later and I'll be like, oh yeah. And when they call me best friend, like, I'm thinking like, oh my God, they totally love me. And I'm there with you in that moment. And I think that's what, like, transcends those, love them, leave them moments, is because woo does have that ability, and you guys have that to, like, put this, like, soft spot in us to know that we could not talk to you for, a month, 3 months, 17 years. And then next thing you know, we're like, oh, I've missed you. And, so happy to see you again. I think that's one of those wonderful things about the playfulness of your woo too. And you can see it in both of you, that you're just, like, really fun to be around, and it does draw people in. So I understand you're, like, pulling to try to get us deliberatives, Chad and I, like, come on, give me all of your information right now. And we're, like, holding our cards until we're ready to show you, right? Feel that pain. Oh, I love it.
I think,
yeah, go ahead.
Well, I don't know how this comes into I've thought of it several times for a lot of questions, so I'm just going to share. A big aha for me was that woo just automatically assumes that people can be won over, that, like, woo can win in this moment, whatever that means. And so it was interesting for me to realize that, like, I don't know necessarily how to win everyone over, and not everyone is won over in the way that I think that they will be won over, and that's actually one thing that has been so great about strengths, is it's given me this language to understand that when deliberative Chad, and deliberative Jen, are in front of me, I will change the way that that I'm speaking or the way that I'm acting, I might slow down my words a little bit. I might, just be more comfortable in the pause. Or I might use words like, hey, just some food for thought, or can we think about this and can we talk about it later? That's a way to win you over. Just, if what I need is information from you or a decision from you and you're on my team, I'm not I'm winning you over, like that translates into getting what I need, right? So as your leader or your manager, what I need is a decision. So I have to set that up ahead of time, So it's just, I think that's what we really want naturally is to win others over, and realizing that not everyone is won over in the same way. Is just a big light bulb. And I think strengths is a great tool to be able to use for Woo, to have that language to better understand how other people approach situations so that you can meet them where they are,
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so interesting because it's this blend of talents that we talk about, right? So we know they're not in a silo, that we use them. All of us who have whatever the talent is use it differently. Chad and I have deliberative, we don't use it the same way. A lot of similarities, just like you guys with your Woo, you don't use it exactly the same way. And I think that's the fun part about it. Can you think of any other like special instances or other people you might have coached or worked with in the past that have Woo and used it differently, like a little more uniquely than either of you have? Brea, do you have anyone? You're muted.
I know I have to put myself on mute because my communication is like, oh yeah, that's all the time. Which is not good for an audio recording.
It's okay. It's okay.
No one is coming to mind.
Okay.
Cindy, do you have someone? Can you come back to me?
Yeah, sure.
I'm thinking about the combination of Woo and harmony is like very, we never show up with just two strengths, right? But I have a couple of people that I've worked with over the past years, and it feels so like quieter than my Woo. And it feels kind of stealth, like they're wooing, but it's not as noticeable. It's not as like up front. And harmony can be this, it's a relationship building theme, right? So for those of you who are listening that have harmony, right, I've seen it feels influencing in many ways because they're building bridges, they're finding common ground, they're building consensus, and it's, they're in it for the long haul. So then all of a sudden, like these different groups are like, and you can see groups coming together. But when I see harmony and Woo together, there's a social energy that's different with just Woo alone or with harmony alone, but I don't even know how to describe it. Brea, you might have better words. But it's just really, it's quieter. It's a little more subtle. Maybe that's a good word.
I loved it. I loved that you called it stealth Woo, right? Like it would like sneaks up on you. Like I'm being all calming and giving you this calming presence, and then bam, you're like influenced to what we were gonna do.
so it's interesting.
Love it.
For me, I have harmony as number 4, and so what's resonating here actually a little bit, as much as Woo is number 32 for me, I'm actually getting, I can resonate with that because I often enter social conversations through my learner. I'm often asking questions and then processing, but it's almost always other-centered. My harmony shows up a little bit more from a practical standpoint. The practical language out of that description is a little bit more me, but there is that consensus and sort of finding the common ground that I'm really appreciating about how you're describing that, Cindy, because I think that is a very interesting application of that combo. I could see that being a really powerful, but also you described it so well. So I guess I'm reflecting that back because I think some listeners that might not have some of the quote unquote louder themes, we think about command or a lot of the other influencing themes. Not necessarily picking on them, but just there's a different level of volume to that, right? There's a different pronouncement of that. And I think that that's a really valuable point. I could also see maybe in election kind of working that same way, that little more quiet, more thoughtful, more slow paced sort of approach to woo as being a really interesting combo. So thank you very much for putting that out there. I hadn't thought about that before.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah.
Brea, did you think of one?
Well, yes, Cindy's answer reminded me of someone that I've coached in the past who is a very strong introvert. I mean, not an ambivert and not, like right in the middle, of the MBTI scale. She strongly identifies as an introvert and leads with woo in her top 5, which a lot of people just, I think,
wouldn't
never
expect.
that. Yeah. I don't remember. It's been a while. I don't remember what her other themes were, but just to know that that's possible, and I'm sure it was, that she had other relationship building and strategic thinking themes that just allowed it to be a little bit more subtle, more stealthy,
Awesome.
Yeah.
Chad, did you have any combinations that you wanted to bring to the table?
Not really. I actually have not coached many people with woo. I don't know if it's the audience I attract, but it just has not been one that's been top of my radar.
Yeah.
So that's another reason why I'm really interested to have this conversation and learn a little bit more, because it's a theme I want to be personally, a little selfishly, I want to be prepared for,
right.
to know both sort of the loud version, the quiet versions, and also think about how those come out, in relation to some of the other themes. So I appreciate the perspectives that have already been shared. Yes, Brea, I want your quick thought, and then I want to move us on to the next question.
Like, for those who don't know, it's more uncommon to find woo and relator together. And I do see that, pretty often, but I coach a lot of people, right? So relatively speaking, not as often. So if you are listening and you have woo and relator together, talk to a coach about that, or just, introspect a little bit, because that's very cool combination. And can really, like, a lot of the things we've talked about with woo, that the things to look out for, relator can really help manage those really well.
Yeah.
Or fill the gaps. I can imagine, the depth of relationship, we've talked about sort of the woo kind of not skipping across the top, but a lot of width, maybe not quite as much depth, but then relator adds that depth component. So I could definitely see that being a really powerful combo. I do want to keep us moving on. I want to be cognizant of your wonderful time and your wonderful perspectives.
Yes.
Sometimes when people are first learning about their themes, it can help to associate with a certain image or household object or pop culture reference. I'm curious if there are images that you either commonly refer to or think of when you think about the woo theme that you might be willing to share with our listeners, so that somebody either trying to understand it from the outside or trying to first process this theme might be able to connect with. And I'm going to come to you for our first image, and then obviously I want to hear from Cindy as well, and Jen, if you've got one, I'd love to include you in too.
Yeah, thanks, Chad. It's really hard for me to think of my woo without my communication, so the image that I think of is someone on a stage, or someone with a microphone, or someone with a megaphone that is using their words to, win others over. That's the image that I think of. Yeah.
Okay. Cindy.
So there's two things. One is very playful. It's a song, and it's the Michael Bublé song, I Just Haven't Met You Yet.
Oh, nice.
So I just haven't met you. So that song is playing in my mind often, and it's very funny. But I think of that. But I also think back of, a great exercise to do is to think about when you look back, when you were very young, when could you see that strength show up in your life? And when I think of my 8th grade self, I'm an old gymnast, a former gymnast, and I was helping with bringing the 8th graders into the high school, and our principal or coach, I don't know, somebody asked me, Cindy, can you help lead this session on, it was something in the gym and something that I was very comfortable with. And I was in 8th grade and he gave me the microphone. So it's funny you said that, Brea. And that's the image I go back to if someone says, when do you first think about how your woo was showing up in your life? You know, and I think of when I was 4 years old, and you know, I was always trying to meet people, but that 8th grade moment when I just jumped, they did not prepare me for that. That wasn't something where they said, Cindy, we want you to help. And I jumped up, and I remember, but it's a story that principal tells, would tell. And that made me feel good, made me feel like, oh, that was easy. That wasn't hard. It wasn't nerve-wracking. It wasn't stressful. And talking in front of the entire class. So that's just, that's images that come to mind.
There's an exercise that we do a lot in workshops called the stand-up exercise. Invite people to stand up if they relate with a picture. And the picture that I always use is this girl, and she's probably 7 years old or whatever, and wearing a black t-shirt. And on the t-shirt, it says, hi, teacher. You know, it doesn't matter if you change my seat, I'll talk to anyone. You know? So, like, that's like also woo, you know, is usually just very, very engaged, whether it's talking or just being with people. There's, you know, everybody's your friend. So
Nice.
The social butterfly, that's mine, Chad.
Okay. I was gonna say, and I'm just gonna add, and it's actually one that you almost inadvertently talked about at the very beginning of the show, which is almost that greeter, the store greeter, you know, whether it's Walmart or Home Depot or Lowe's, somebody greeting you at the store and then actually pointing you to, you know, where you need to go. You were talking about that connection piece, and the first thing I thought of was, you know, somebody at Lowe's pointing you like, oh, you need, you know, screws are down on aisle 20 and the lawnmowers are, you know, back here, you know, aisle 4. That beautiful, you know, immediate connection, and then being able to match make right there in the moment to put somebody in the right spot at the right time with the right resources. So that's kind of mine, is that sort of store greeter. You know, I hope that's not too cliche-ish or stereotypical, but it was language that all of you were talking about. So I sort of globbed onto that.
I love it. And we've already said this, but I have to say it again. Like, too much woo is too much you, right? And so, Chad, that's the perfect example of how woo is focused on winning them over by giving them what they want, versus woo coming in and trying to get you to want what I want. That's the difference, right? Too much woo is too much you is trying to get them to want what I want. The perfect use of woo, right, is the person who comes in the store. What do I want? I want a lawnmower. Woo is able to like make that experience really wonderful for them and give them what they want, right?
Right. So good.
Right. I think put us at the table where we are greeting people at a conference and giving people the name tag and their bag and getting them settled. We will look you right in the eye, help you navigate whatever you want, kind of usher you in, Sherpa you along the way.
Nice.
That's just a great role for us. And somebody might be like, oh, that's exhausting. That's for us. That is so energizing. We want to meet everyone anyway. So put us there so that we can support onboarding. You know, I guess it's in a way onboarding, training people to make them feel warm, welcome, and safe, comfortable. Yeah.
Yeah, so good.
So since we're talking about interacting with others already, I'm curious if maybe you could each provide a little bit of advice on giving advice particularly to team leaders. But if you also want to take the approach of thinking about a peer, what advice would you give to those people to help a person with woo come out of that application? So we talked a little bit about how you lean on a certain theme to kind of rein in your woo, or, put it back more in the Goldilocks zone. If you're talking to a team leader or peer, how do you help that person from the outside come out of that runaway woo? Are there certain certain tools that they could think about, or certain approaches, or maybe even a certain theme of theirs that would help? However you want to take that question, and just try to help team leaders that might be thinking about this. How do I support somebody on my team that has woo and I have no connection with? Like, if I was to lead somebody with woo, it's 32 for me. So I'm trying to make a connection or help them come out of that sort of tailspin version of woo. What does that look like?
The first thing that comes to mind is set them up for success. As much as you can, make it their job to woo, and that's not specific to woo, that's with every talent, but it's just so simple, but it's so easy to miss, just look at what woo contributes and try to find the opportunities where you need that on your team, and tap them. They will love you for that, offer feedback, like Cindy said, that's what we need, is to offer the feedback. And woo can, depending on the other talents, like woo might need a little bit of a softer delivery of that feedback, because the desire is to win you over. And if they haven't, just beware that based on their other talents, they may need you to come in kind of nice and kind. But if they're leading with a lot of other influencing themes like command or self-assurance, they want that direct feedback. Like, do not beat around the bush. So be very aware of what kind of woo they have, and and then just set them up for success.
Cindy, what would your advice or contribution be?
Yeah, I echo, just find ways that they can use their woo, like in any other talent, right, to get to their expected outcomes. I have my HR hat on.
Yes.
Their expected outcomes, right? Like, how can you use your woo as often as possible in your job? And sometimes it's expected outcomes, but sometimes those are the folks that want to help with an employee resource group and head up ways that are fun and playful to bring people together, to move your expectations around your culture and your values. So they will be willing and excited about something extra on their plate where they can use their woo that you might not think about it as part of their job, right? So asking them to be involved, or just, I would ask, what ways do you see? If someone on your team has woo, what ways do you see that you might be able to use that talent that we haven't talked about yet? Because you can bet that they have a list. they see where connecting people, building social interactions is going to be valuable for the team, where those activities are going to be.
They're probably already seeing the holes and are like, oh, let me, and like, put me in, coach, let me do it, right?
Exactly. I'm ready to play. Yeah.
I was just thinking, Cindy introduced us. I think actually, Cindy, you brought the first song as a pop culture to any of our episodes. So kudos to that. You've now just brought a second song. So it's Put Me in, Coach, and I Just Haven't Met You Yet by Michael Bublé. That's so awesome. I think those are great because they both are about the people and finding the right role. And I think that's just beautiful right there. So nice. And to be honest, you actually just answered the last two questions that I was going to ask. And so I'm not even really going to bother, because I was going to ask about what advice you were going to give team members to help a person offer their best. You've just told us, put them in places where that social aspect is, you're talking their language, you're putting them in the right role, you're setting them up for success. So I think that's great. And I'll just bring something back up that Brea, you mentioned, which is don't think about just winning in the moment. Yeah, you had highlighted earlier. Think about well before. How can Woo impact a team's performance or a team interaction before the event and well after the event? And I thought you brought that up earlier, and I was just going to reinforce it now because I thought that was a really brilliant observation and sharing that I think a lot of people will benefit from. So thank you for that.
I think also it's important for leaders to be aware that because Woo brings social energy, like without even trying, it shows up and people know that Woo is in the room, right? If you have people on your team that lead with Woo and you're trying to you need people on the team to be won over to change, to something new or whatever.
You need the buy-in.
You need the buy-in. You have to get the buy-in first from the people like Woo who lead with influencing, because if they're not won over, no one else is going to be won over. But if you win them over, right? So if that's a one-on-one meeting, if that's, whatever that takes to woo the Woo, then they will help you win everyone else over.
Yes.
But if they're not won over, it will be very, very hard for you to win everyone else.
Yeah.
And Brea, I love that. And I try to find the analyticals, the deliberative, and the Woo, right? And maybe maximizers. Because then you have, right, because the analyticals and the deliberatives are going to be quite skeptical about whatever the new challenge, new mission, new direction is. But when you can partner those groups together, you can, in a very organic way, move the culture forward. So I always look, as with my Woo, I look at if I'm in a workshop and the analytical deliberatives are all in, I'm good. I'm ready. And I know, like, if I need to do that in the first 4 to 6 minutes and make sure that happens, even if I have like a half-day workshop. And I often will tease and say, like, all right, we're in. I can tell you're all set now. We're good to go. Sometimes I'm like, oh, but yeah,
Nice. Well, so
you guys have been awesome.
You've been awesome. This has been fantastic. I'm going to actually ask the two of you, as coaches, we often encourage our clients to sort of sum up their own experience at the end of a coaching call. At least I know I do. So in the spirit of this, in that spirit, to wrap up our podcast episode today, I'm curious if each of you could very briefly and succinctly give us maybe 1 or 2 key points that you think people should absolutely walk away knowing about Woo. Cindy, you look like you're thinking, so I'm going to go to Brea for a second because it looks like she's ready to go. I'm reading faces here, so I'm going to read yours.
No.
Hopefully, I got it right.
Oh no, she says.
Well, I love what Cindy said about feedback. It's so true. And whatever, just a reminder that the feedback might be verbal, it might be nonverbal. You can get feedback in a lot of ways, but if you're Woo and you're looking for that, just be aware. You're going to find it all over. You'll be like, oh my gosh, that's why I, So be aware of that and lean into it, because that will help you meet that need that you're looking for. And vice versa. If you're leading someone, that needs that feedback, please offer that. And then the second thing you asked for 2, I would say too much Woo is too much you. I think the healthiest Woo is, is focused on the other person and helping them get whatever they need or whatever they want.
Nice.
Awesome.
Cindy, what are your 2 takeaways?
Yeah, I'd say just the first one is so simple. It's just, if you're interested in growing your network in any way, just ask us and we will help you get there. It's what we love to do. And then the other thing I was thinking of that we haven't really talked about, but I wanted to just drop in, is that Woo provides a lot of social courage. So think about managerial courage, leadership courage, like there's a social courage that Woo brings. And as a leader or just a person, right? Anybody, just recognizing that as a way that Woo can be valuable. It's just a different way of looking at it. Yeah, there's a social courage. I think that would be helpful for other people to know and learn about and kind of explore as they learn more about whether you have Woo or you work with people or live with people that have Woo. There are people in your life that have Woo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So good.
I'm appreciating that, not to bring the summit all the way back up around, but given that Jen and I are deliberative responsibility, maybe a little bit more toned down than the two of you, that social courage to be able to sort of pair with somebody like that from a massive event, as much as we want to go and learn and make connections, having somebody that can provide us almost by proxy that social courage. I think that's an awesome contribution and a wonderful wrap-up point. So
you better believe I'll be looking for both of them when we're at the summit. Like, oh my gosh, I need someone to like help me get around this big giant room of all these people. Absolutely. Yeah. The one key takeaway, the thing that I hadn't ever thought of before, and Brea shared with us, was that you can't woo by yourself. And that it's not even just about wooing anyone, it's meeting those new people, which I hadn't ever really thought of, like that you are thriving, like really thriving when you are meeting new people. And I had never really put those two together. I just thought it was like, you just need anybody, not new people necessarily. So I think I learned a lot about Woo and your needs and really what can make you guys shine in those places. So I'm so thankful that you came to us today. Thank you.
So I'm going to join Jen in thanking you both again. You spent far too much time with us. I appreciate every minute of it. What you've shared here has been so instructive for me. So I thank you. Just joining Jen in that. That is sort of the end of our show. I am going to encourage those of you that are listening and liked the information we've shared today and our wonderful guests, that if you leave a comment or share this around so that others can benefit from the knowledge here. We'd also love for people to leave us comments. If you have something to add to what Cindy and Brea have shared with us today, please do so on whatever social platforms you find us. We are on Acast and on YouTube.
And if you want to get in touch with our guests, we will leave in the show notes both the contact information for Brea and for Cindy. And of course, if you want to get in touch with Chad and I, you can find our contact information there as well.
So until next time, I'm Chad Ahern from Talent Teams Consulting. That's going to keep encouraging you to play to your strengths.
And I'm Jen Werner of Jen Werner Coaching, encouraging you to be uniquely you.
Thank you so much and have a great day.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.